foreign predatory parasitic corporations are replacing our natural environment with an industrial landscape of wind turbines. One Nation will stand against sending children down a path of drug dependency and body mutilation to appease the gender cult. Leave our kids alone. The Trusted Digital Identity Bill is a global surveillance and control mechanism that profit-hungry corporations and power-mad politicians drafted and crafted. One Nation opposes this inhuman dystopian future that the United Nations promotes as the Great Reset, and we condemn this Parliament for signing onto it. I called for Australia to reject the World Economic Forum's Great Reset and instead mount a great resist. Just like the koalas being euthanized to make way for wind turbines or damaged solar panels leaking toxic heavy metals into waterways, the United Nations net zero plan again involves killing the environment to save it. I've been speaking about the fear, the oppression and the inhuman cruelty of our COVID response since July 2020. I promised to hound down those responsible, and I will continue relentlessly to keep that promise. You're about to be live with me, Senator Malcolm Roberts. Hi. Well, I'm coming to you from Canberra, but my thoughts are in Brisbane, actually, because with the people in Brisbane, because my wife's shown me photos of the flooding around our house and in the suburb, and we've heard news reports of some pretty big flooding. So I don't like politicians who say keep safe. I think that's something that people can do on their own, but I hope things are going well for you wherever you are, and it's not too severe. The Bureau of Meteorology did not predict this, from what I'm told by my wife. They didn't predict the extra duration of it, and they didn't predict when it's going to stop. So the Bureau of Meteorology was part of Senate Estimates hearings this week here in Canberra. I'm coming to you from Canberra. I have to catch a plane in a little while. But the Bureau of Meteorology and many other key departments and agencies were put on pretty late at night compared to normal. And guess what? The earlier agencies took longer than expected, and so we didn't get to some of the key ones. CSIRO had very little time right near the end, and I was busy with the TGA. I mean, where are you going to go when you've got the TGA in front of you? You're going to stay there, of course. So that's one of the problems with being in a minor party. We have to cover, Pauline and I have to cover all of the committees, all of the agencies, or as many as we can. We can't possibly cover them all. And so sometimes when they're delayed, it means going into one committee, staying there for a few minutes, coming out, staying there for 10 minutes, and jumping around all over the place. So we missed BOM, we missed CSIRO. BOM, fortunately, though, was carried over in a spillover. So we'll get to hold them accountable in the near future with a date to be set for another hearing. But I'll talk to you about Senate estimates. That'll be the main theme that I'll cover today. I want to welcome people from people on Instagram. I think we're now on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and maybe Rumble. This is being done with a program called StreamYard, and it's being broadcast live onto each of those platforms. Before talking in detail about Senate estimates, I want to thank my Senate office team. Fellow senators here slap me on the back and just say, wow, you're everywhere. And it's only because, and I mean only because, I have such amazing staff. We have 3 staff who are writing questions, gathering data, doing research, and then sitting down, briefing me on the topics, because there's no way one person can do this on his own. And as I said, Pauline and I, we have to go to so many different agencies, sometimes simultaneously. So I really want to thank my staff. They work long hours. I mean, Senate Estimates goes from 9 a.m. till 11 p.m., sometimes even later. And so sometimes we start in the office at 7:30 and don't finish till 11. So that's the way it is. And the other thing I want to point out to everyone is that my staff do so much work, do a hell of a lot of work. And then if the schedule means that their topic comes up at the same time as another important topic comes up, and they miss out on getting their questions aired and watching their questions tickle bureaucrats and hold them accountable and extracting information, they don't worry about it. I mean, most people would be disappointed. They just take it as part of the the process. So as I said, we have three people doing research, getting data, writing questions. I modify the questions, sit down with them, get a briefing. Then we've got another member of staff who coordinates it all. I mean, just phenomenal staff. These guys are very, very competent. So Senate estimates is about committees. There are 8 committees in the Senate, and they're responsible for organizing various agencies over 1 day, 2 days. They put out a schedule, and we have 3, sometimes 4 committees going at the same time. So there'll be an agency in each of them, and they take varying lengths. So it's quite quite a challenge to manage. As I said, we can be going ready to ask questions in one agency, and all of a sudden another agency comes up and it's delayed, and we have to run around. But it's about putting departments and agencies on notice that the people are watching, because the people give us comments through our posts, and some people watch it live, and you can watch all of them live. You just have to get the schedule from the Senate page, and then go to the individual committees. So it's also about holding the staff and the agencies accountable. They get paid a lot of money down here in Canberra, very high money, and we want to make sure that we get value for money. And sometimes it can be frustrating watching, because you think you just want to jump out and strangle them. But we don't necessarily expect answers straight away. We would like them, of course, but sometimes we're setting people up to hold them accountable a few down the road. And we've seen that. We've done that quite a few times. One of my staffers was asking a question on water, and I didn't ask that question for 3 years, because we were setting them up to make sure that we got the truth on this one. So it is a matter of thinking ahead. There's a lot of planning that goes on. And I just want to say again, my staff do an amazing job. Okay, let's start with a bit of humour. The Australian Human Rights Commission came up in front of us. I asked them how much they'd spent on legal representations in immigration matters. They couldn't tell me, and I wouldn't expect them to. They've done a lot of work. But they also pointed out that they're not necessarily representing people, they're doing advocacy. How much is spent on total on legal matters? And how many cases where the Human Rights Council intervened or appeared in or for an Australian who lost a job due to a vaccine mandate? 0. 0. One of the biggest breaches of human rights ever in this country, and not one case. And then I asked them, this is where the fun comes in, could you please explain the Commission's intervention in the federal court case Tickle and Giggle to argue that sex isn't real? I won't go into the details of the case, but basically, I think someone who claims to be transgender, there's no such thing as transgender. You can't change gender. You can't change sex. It's rubbish. But someone who claims to be that took on someone for making a statement, I think, or post or whatever. So I asked the Human Rights Commissioner, how many letters does the Commission recognise after LGB? And she gave me 4 or 5. I can't remember, but one of them was new to me. And I've been chasing this issue for a long time. And I want to point out that what I'm going to take you through does not represent all of the Australian Human Rights Commission commissioners. I know of at least one that we've had dealings with. I've praised her in the Senate estimates hearing, Commissioner Lorraine Finlay. She's a marvellous woman, stands up very, very strong and speaks out, speaks her mind. Took a position against key issues, and I think even went against the Australian Human Rights Commission's official position. And that's what we need. People, public servants who don't just follow the herd. So I said to them, in the Australian Human Rights Commission submission, for Tickle and Giggle, they have argued sex is not a biological concept, nor does it refer to male or female. What else does sex or gender refer to? Sex is not binary, limited to male or female. Oh, really? I mean, we're paying taxes for this. Sex can be changed. No, it can't. You can cut bits off people. You can have surgery on bits of people, but you cannot change sex. And think about this. When people are given an option for the sex they want to become when they're changed, there are only 2 options. Male or female? What do you want to become? So, to be considered female, this is another statement in their submission. To be considered female, it just needs to say female on a birth certificate, which a male can do at any stage of life. I mean, and then here, another quote. At least as early as the 1990s, it has been accepted that sex is changeable, end of quote. So I said, what happened in 1990s? No one could tell me. The words female and woman include men who claim to be women. Oh, really? Come on. And I asked them how much they'd spend on this intervention. That's your money at work. So, I mean, sometimes we're just trying to make a point by our questions, but we're also trying to get information. Another one, this one, I'll only be brief on this one. We're having a bit of a win, I think. Some may be aware of questions about sex. It's a book with sex in the title. I can't remember. I should know, but we've asked them questions so many times. It's a little blue book. It should be almost R-rated, but we believe that people over 14, 15 can handle it. It claims to be sex education. The author of the book says that she would be happy with her 8-year-old getting it. Amazon says for 10 and up. We think, all right, 14 and up, 15 and up. So we've been arguing that we need to have another classification like M+ in there so that the books, because people can get this book, children of 8 or younger can get this book anytime they want, sometimes in libraries, sometimes in bookstores. So we think it should be restricted to people 14 and over or 15 and over. And so we've been arguing that instead of having a free-for-all and then a restricted R18+, we should have the middle one that the movies also have. And so we got some encouraging news from the classification board that they're working on that. They're doing a review, and of course they can't make a decision before they complete listening to people, and I wouldn't expect that. But they understand the issues and they acknowledge those issues. And then the Fair Work Commission, where we ask questions about the largest wage theft ever in this country. Probably billions of dollars we're talking about. A deliberate underpayment of thousands of casual coal miners. Casual coal miners, so-called casual coal miners. They're working the permanent roster, 24-hour roster, and they lost their entitlements. And the people who lost them their entitlements are the CFMEU, now known as the Mining and Energy Division, because the Mining and Energy Union has pulled out of the CFMEU. They signed or were party to every one of the enterprise agreements that cover so-called casuals. In the black coal mining industry, this is the way our Fair Work Act is going, particularly under Labor and particularly those connected with Labor. But the Liberals presided over this as well. So in the Black Coal Mining Industry Award, there's no classification such as casual. You cannot be a casual under the Black Coal Mining Award. And yet if they have an enterprise agreement that makes conditions for casuals, then they can be casuals. Okay, let's just accept that. I don't really, but let's just accept that that's true. There's a test called the BOOT test, the Better Off Overall Test, B-O-O-T, Better Off Overall Test, the BOOT test. That's where a commissioner who's ruling on an application for an enterprise agreement has to consider all of the conditions in the award. That has to be minimum, that has to be the minimum, and then the enterprise agreement has to be at least equal to that or better. What we've got is an award that's like that, say the pay rate. Enterprise agreements that are like this for permanence. Enterprise agreements that are like this for casuals. But the casuals are entitled to a 25% loading. Everyone in Australia knows that. Well, there's no bloody loading. These casuals have lost their entitlements and not been compensated for it. You should have, if they were just complying with the award, you'd have the award rate, you have the casuals on the award rate plus 25%. No, they're not. They've lost their entitlements, lost significant things of value and they're not being compensated for it. In addition, under some agreements, the award rate that they're paid supposedly is below the award. So their base rate is below the award, and they can't even get a loading on top of that. So they're being paid less than the award. And it's billions, potentially, of dollars. We rattled off, have a look at the videos when we post them. We rattled off 5, and we asked the Fair Work Commission and the Fair Work Ombudsman to consider these awards. But the CFMEU, or the Mining and Energy Union as it's now known, we're a party to, or signed off on all 5 agreements, because we rattled off 5 of them just to give an example. The Fair Work Commission approved all 5 agreements. The enterprise agreements all underpay the award. These are these are the 5. The Core Staff Enterprise Agreement 2018, a yearly underpayment estimated at $22,623. And it wasn't me doing the sums. I didn't have any part of it. We got independent lawyers, independent consultants, miners actually working the roster. The roster is a fairly complex roster. They costed it out. The Core Staff Enterprise Agreement 2018, if you're a casual under that enterprise agreement, then we estimate the wage theft to be $22,623. If you're a casual working, a so-called casual working on the FES Agreement 2018, the yearly underpayment is estimated at $27,563 wage theft. The WorkPack Agreement 2019, the yearly underpayment estimated at $33,555 wage theft. The Chandler McLeod Agreement 2020, the yearly underpayment, the lawyers, the consultants, and the miners have estimated that. They've done the sums, just applied the award as it should be to the roster that they work, the 12-hour rosters. Chandler McLeod Agreement 2020 for casuals, yearly underpayment estimated at $39,341. And then the Tessa Group Agreement 2022, yearly underpayment estimated at $40,645 wage theft. So we asked questions holding the Fair Work Commission accountable and asked them specifics, because we will continue this. We've been going on it almost 5 years. First with the Liberal government, Liberal national governments, they tried to bury it. Now with the Labor Party government, and they're bringing in legislation to try and bury this so that their mates who've donated millions of dollars from the CFMEU and the Mining and Energy Union into Labor Party campaigns get off scot-free. We're not going to let them get off scot-free. We're going to look. We're seeking justice. So we also asked the Fair Work Ombudsman similar questions, and we'll be holding them more accountable in the future. We're just building a stronger case. And then we got to the E-Safety Commissioner. Wow. American accent or North American accent, which, I mean, I'm married to a woman with a North American accent, so I don't hold that against her. But clearly, she's not Australian. She may be now, but she's not an Australian background. She, in my view, shows the traits of a globalist. She went to the World Economic Forum planning session in Davos last month. Taxpayers paid for it. She's mixing with the globalists. She was claiming that she's working on a global system for e-safety. Now that does not thrill me. So we asked her various questions. She said that the World Economic Forum planning session in Davos, planning, that indicates that they've got some mind to do it. She said, quote, "We have started something called the Global Online Safety Regulator." And she elaborated by saying they've got Australia, United Kingdom, Ireland, and Fiji. So I'd like to know who the we is. We started this. And then she also said, further remarks she made is reported as something like this: "We have reached a tipping point where technology is neither good nor bad. We need to be pushing towards the forces of good." I asked her, who defines what is good? Who defines what is good? one of the globalists, no doubt. They've defined plenty of what's good, haven't they? Mandated injections that are no damn good. Oh, and then I'll talk about several agencies that we held accountable for positions on energy. The Department of Parliamentary Services, which looks after the Parliament House here, the offices and so on, has installed 10 electric vehicle charging stations in the public car parks, and each of the car parks is installing them. Who pays for this? Well, we're paying for it as taxpayers, and the company that will be charging for the use of the electricity will gradually repay the taxpayer. So we asked her when the diesel Bowser would be installed. No, not going to be installed. See how they're favouring things? They're pushing the electric vehicles, solar and wind, you watch, and cost doesn't matter. Then we asked people about we asked the Australian Renewable Energy Agency about the large-scale battery storage funding round, and putting $176 million of taxpayers' funds into 8 batteries with a total of 2 gigawatts of dispatchable power. How long will it last? 2 hours for just a fraction of New South Wales. So there's more subsidies that do not figure on the cost of solar and wind. Oh, that book I was talking about, one of my team has just put up. It's called Welcome to Sex. How can I forget that? But anyway. And then we had Snowy Hydro 2 in the room. Florence, the tunnel boring machine on the Snowy 2 project, has started again. It was bogged for many, many months. But the really serious thing that emerged from this, the questions that we asked, were that there may be no water to use in their Snowy 2 project, because the top dam, the Tantangara Reservoir, has very low capacity. Sorry, it has high capacity, but very low catchment area, and it has a very low yield every year and has very low levels of water. And on top of that, we found out that the New South Wales government is going to take more water out of Tantangara and put it into the Murrumbidgee River. And so I might as well deal with it now. We also held the Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment, and Water, I think I've got them all, accountable just today in the water sessions. And they initially refused to take questions. They said, I put them on notice, but they said they would get Snowy Hydro to do it. And I said, no, I want you guys to do it. You're in charge of the water. And they eventually agreed to that. But there's something going on here, something that's not right. And the Snowy Hydro 2 has to get water from the owners of the water, which is either the Commonwealth Government on the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder, or whoever else has been given that water. And we want to know where the water's coming from, because Tantangara has a very low catchment area, very low effective capacity. So there's another question. I mean, Snowy 2 just goes from one catastrophe to the next. It was decided to engage on it without any cost-benefit analysis that we could see. They redacted significant things out of the business case. There's no merit for this. It does not make sense. And it started off at $5 billion, I think, maybe even less than that. Then it went to 10, it went to 12. Oh, no, it won't get higher. Each time it went higher. And now some people are saying they won't get out of the place with it fully set up to deliver power for less than $24 billion. So, and there may not be water for it. We'll keep digging. And then we went on to the Australian Energy Regulator. Under the Peak Smart, I think it's called, Queensland, we asked them questions about Queensland's Peak Smart air conditioning control system, in which the government can intervene and cut the air conditioners back or off, put them on low or turn them off, in the event that there is a brownout and there's not enough electricity. Because they're envisaging, they've got to work towards this because they know solar and wind is not reliable, so they've got to cover their backsides. Queensland also has an emergency backstop mechanism where you've paid for solar panels on your roof. They can control them remotely, and at certain kinds of situations, they can come in and turn your solar panels off and stop you even getting power out of your own solar panels on your own roof. Not just stop it feeding into the grid, but stop it feeding your house. This is called complete control of electricity. Complete control of electricity. So and they couldn't help us much. And I thought they were supposed to be looking after clean energy regulations. What's the next one? Clean Energy Regulator. Sorry, that was the Australian Energy Regulator. See, the alphabet soup is so confusing. There are so many agencies in Canberra, and there are so many agencies. This is a UN trick. So many agencies in Canberra in energy alone, and you don't know what the responsibilities are. And when you ask them for responsibilities, they point out, oh no, someone else has got that responsibility. There's one thing that's really important to understand. No one can tell us what the cost of solar and wind energy is. No one can tell us what the benefits are. No one can quantify that in terms of cutting carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is harmless. It's a natural, essential gas, trace gas that's essential for all life on Earth. No one can tell us what impact on reducing carbon dioxide any of these initiatives have. Not one. How the hell do you track policy? What they're doing is they're just throwing billions of dollars down the drain, and they're destroying our electricity grid, which used to be the best and the cheapest in the world. And now it's amongst the most expensive. So do you do any modeling on how much wind and solar, or measuring or analysis on how much solar and wind actually cost once you include all the firming, the integration cost of storage and the additional transmission? No. So they don't even test the Australian electricity market operators integrated system plan. The whole country is flying blind. And Pauline and I have been saying this for many, many years, but they're still going. They're still going on this. And who will pay for this? You and I as electricity users, you and I as small business people, you and I as employers, you and I as employees will pay for this, because there'll be people out of work on this. And then we got news of the Australian National Audit Office. It said in January, I'm going to read a quote, "The Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water reports annually on progress towards targets. However, the National Audit Office is unable to demonstrate the extent, the department is unable to demonstrate the extent to which specific Australian government policies and programs have contributed or are expected to contribute towards overall emissions reduction." And I point out that the department agreed and accepted that recommendation. And then in front of me in Senate estimates said, oh no, we don't accept it. We're madly disagreeing with it. Oh, really? So they can't quantify any difference that these initiatives are making. Just stunning. And these people, the lowest paid department head in Canberra a couple of years ago was on $650,000. Some are around $1 million, some are over $1 million a year in their package, their employment package. And they're destroying our country, following orders from politicians. Oh, we didn't get to Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, CSIRO, because it was on at the same time as the TGA, which I'll get onto next. But GenCost, which is any politician, bureaucrat you ask, who's pushing this rubbish, they say solar and wind is cheapest. So I say, where do you get that from? Because it's not cheapest. By far from the cheapest, especially when you add all the things in that you need to manage the grid and to compensate for the inadequacies of solar and wind, especially their low reliability, their insecurity, their instability. So every politician says they got their figures from GenCost, the CSIRO's report. Now the CSIRO, I'm going to go into more detail with CSIRO. We started them last October. They couldn't tell us the basic costs of the cost parameters for any pumped hydro storage mechanism. Not one, yet they're advocating it. So I was going to ask some questions on GenCost, because what it seems to us is that many of the things that will be built for solar and wind, such as extraordinary amount of transmission lines, because solar and wind are scattered to the blazes all over the country. That means more transmission lines, plus solar and wind have such a range that that you need a very high, even though they don't produce much very often at all at their rated capacity, you need to provide for their rated capacity just on the few seconds that it might actually get there. You don't want to blow everything up. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars. And guess what? They say that by 2030, they'll all exist, so therefore the cost on solar and wind doesn't need to include them. They're only being built because of the damn things are being installed only for solar and wind. So it's a complete lie. They're either incredibly sloppy, incredibly irresponsible, or they're fraudulent. So we're going to explore that much, much more. Health. These people cannot be trusted. This agency just cannot be trusted. They're rubber stamped for pharmaceutical sector, the massive multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry globally. They don't care about taxpayers' health. That's what they're there for, but they don't care about taxpayers' health. I think they're working for Big Pharma, not the taxpayers. Well, look at this. Many people in Australia know Professor Skerritt's name after he was the former head of the TGA. After the COVID injections were rolled out and mandated and approved without any physical testing in this country, or testing that passed the no testing by the authorities in America, who gave approval based upon Pfizer's trials that weren't conducted completely. Professor Skerritt's career includes a period as deputy head of the Department of Health and head of the Therapeutic Goods Administration that approves these vaccines, these injections. 8 months after leaving the TGA, he retired last April. Professor Skerritt has been appointed to the board of a lobby group for pharmaceutical industry. It's called Medicines Australia, the leading pharmaceutical industry lobby group. The deputy chair of that organisation is the managing director of Pfizer. As head of the TGA, Professor Skerritt introduced mRNA vaccines into Australia, even though it's unproved and very, very new. And the man who developed it, Robert Malone, Dr. Robert Malone, said that it's too risky to introduce. He authorized it, under his leadership, under his control, the TGA authorized it without testing, creating a whole new industry that he is now working in. Does this sound appropriate to you? Because it sounds like a massive conflict of interest to me. It's just a very, very brazen, in my opinion. It's like the rules don't apply to him, or are there no rules? This is what Medicines Australia, the lobby group for Big Pharma, said about Professor Skerritt in their latest annual report. Quote, after 11 years leadership of the Therapeutic Goods Administration, Professor John Skerritt retired in April. Professor Skerritt has been a cornerstone of our health system for many years. Medicines Australia and member companies worked closely with his department during the Medicines and Medical Devices Review and during the rapid registration of COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. On behalf of our industry members and the board, we thank him for his service. Medicines Australia, did they hire him as a thank you? Tearing up years of prudent drug approval? How can someone read it any other way? This is what we want to chase and get to the bottom of. Then I went through many other conflicts of interest. Then we discussed the World Health Organization's International Health Treaty and asked what the latest version is. And we were told the latest version has a date. I can't remember the dates, but they're not on the website for the World Health Organization at the moment. So we asked for copies. They took it on notice and they will give us copies. We note that New Zealand Health Department has put the copies up as they've come out, but our health department hasn't. Then we talked about antidepressants, Australia is the third highest in dosages of antidepressants among our population. Korea is the lowest at 13 of the countries measured. Then we have Australia is way up there near the top, number 3 at 89. The UK is less than us, 71. United States, of course, is worst at 110. So meanwhile, while they're pushing these big pharma products through, antidepressants through, they're not looking after natural remedies. Natural remedies like 150 Aboriginal medicines, medicinal cannabis, which is proven to be safe and highly effective for many people, for many conditions. We asked about the nurses who were sacked recently, 2 weeks ago, in fact, in Queensland, despite the COVID injection mandates being finished. And they said, that's not our responsibility. They pushed the drugs. The federal government pushed the states and some employers into doing it. Now it's none of their business. Then we asked about good manufacturing process, which is a condition of approval of the COVID injections. Good manufacturing processes are essential because to scale up the manufacturing from the test, the original test samples, you need to make sure it's very consistent. Slight changes could kill people. And so, what can I read out of this quickly? We're not convinced. We asked last Senate estimates for whether or not good manufacturing processes were applied, and the data they gave us, you can't tell. So at the moment, we're just relying upon their word for it. Civil Aviation Safety Authority, well, they seem to be a law unto themselves. We gave them a list. They're not aware of some of the incidents. We gave them a list of incidents, last Senate estimates, and the head of CASA, Civil Aviation Safety Authority, the head of CASA said none of those are on the list. She hadn't even seen none of them on the list have not been identified, not been reported to CASA. She said that before even looking at the list that I tabled to her. So I asked her to have a look at the list before she makes a comment. We found out, sure enough, she was wrong. 5 were not on the list. 5 were had not been reported to CASA. Since then, we've had CASA chase down 4 of them, and now I think the 5th, I can't remember exactly, but I think the 5th was there, is now coming to light. Serious incidents involving Qantas planes. And we talked to her about conflicts of interest with free membership to the Chairman's Lounge in Qantas and Virgin. Then I asked questions, going on in time here, so I better hurry. We asked questions of 3 different agencies, Housing Australia, the ATO. No, I didn't get to ATO, that's right, the Australian Taxation Office, because there was a clash with another. And also Treasury about housing, aspects of about housing, what's driving the housing prices, immigration, etc. Another positive we got was the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, ACCC. We think they're actually doing quite a good job in some areas. We asked them questions, and I asked them what they've done about what I perceive to be the fact that our major banks, the big 4, they control 90% of cash deposits in this country, and they're trying to wipe out cash. There's no doubt about that. That's the only conclusion you can draw so far from the Senate inquiry into the closure of rural branches. I asked them if they realised that, in my opinion, we have one bank in Australia with 4 different logos. When you look at the ownership of Westpac, Commonwealth, NAB, what a name for a bank, eh? NAB, and ANZ, and what you'll see is that super funds own it, and they generally limited in pushing their weight around. Mums and dads own it, and they get very rarely involved in controlling a company. And around 10% of each of those companies is owned by a combination of BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, First State, and a few others. Now, when you've got mums and dads and super funds basically silent in how the company's run, that means that 10% is effectively a controlling interest. And they have a say on who the executives will continue to be. So the executives are captured as well, in my view. The banks have the same products, the same strategies, the same methods, the same way of operating. There's very little difference between them. They have great power. If you try to challenge one of the banks, they'll take you to court, and good luck with that, because you haven't got the money to match their lawyers. They've got enormous market power, 90% of the cash in deposits in this country. They've got enormous financial power, obviously. They make 30-something billion, I think, combined last year. They have enormous regulation. Now, people think that the banks you're protected by regulation. I don't see that. What I see is the banks are protected because the regulations are so complex, only a major corporation can weave their way through it, and they know how to defend themselves. So I asked them if they're aware of that, and they said no. They're not aware of the ownership of the banks, or that they haven't seen it as significant. Then what's the time? I'm rushing now to catch up with the plane in a few minutes. The National Emergency Management Division, also agency, was there. We asked them who monitors the progress of controlled burning in relation to bushfires. That's the state's responsibility, and they set their goals. Now, Sky News, a reporter called Jonathan Lee at Sky News indicated New South Wales had only achieved 20% of its hazard reduction burns halfway through the year. Imagine that next summer. So they're way behind, and they admitted that it's not their responsibility because it's the state's responsibility, but they recognised that the states are way behind in their controlled burns. Then we discussed with the Department of the Treasury, as I mentioned a minute ago, foreign ownership, immigration, the impact on housing, and costs of housing, huge. Then we also held accountable the Defence Department for its removal of a post showing the movement of ships when the Taipan downed. Now, they gave me an explanation that I can understand why one of their ships was involved in a photo shoot for the combined Talisman Sabre maritime exercise off the Whitsunday coast at the time of the helicopter crash. I think it's plausible. But what is now the issue is why they were trying to withhold that information from the people. I see nothing wrong with them actually moving large ships away from the search, because the Whitsundays is full of islands, of course, but nonetheless, why did they try and hide that? We found out from the American Navy on their website. We see $45 billion. I asked Mr. Moriarty, the Secretary of the Defence Department, about the $45 billion Hunter-class ship acquisition. We've already spent $4 billion and don't have a boat. This is way off beam. So we asked him why there were why there were inadequate records, or sometimes no records. Why weren't they kept on a $45 billion project? And you can watch his answer. And the records still aren't up to speed. We asked about the capacity or capability of the Arafura-class offshore patrol vessels, and the fact that Defence has outsourced its recruiting. There you go. There are many, many more sessions than that, but that just shows you something about the range we covered. I also want to acknowledge meeting Billy Takahika and his wife, Corinne, today. And they came to Canberra for a series of meetings and to meet me. And I thank them for their support. Billy stood very, very strong all through COVID. He was hounded because he was a political candidate that was zooming up in the polls. He was hounded, jailed, released, has been found not guilty, or all the charges were either either had a finding of not guilty or dismissed. So, 45 minutes. Wow, time flies. Hope that's been of interest to you. Any questions? Michael Blaxland, amazing man. Very wet up here in Gympie as well. Thanks, mate. Well, I know you don't consider yourself part of the southeast, but you're southeast of Queensland. Thanks. Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for listening. Michael Blaxland is an amazing vet. He's just helped people so much. Arcade Gaming, please support the exit of World Health Organization. Well, we'd like to see them exit, but we want an exit from the World Health Organization. Actually, what you come up with is better. Exit of the World Health. Get rid of it altogether. We are supporting that. We were the first to make it public that the United States had initiated these discussions, Arcade, and we were the first to put videos out on it to wake people up. We've been holding the politicians accountable. Because of pressure from around the world, especially the African nations, that World Health Organization, international health regulations and proposed international health regulations and pandemic treaty have been watered back remarkably, but we still don't want them in this country. So put pressure on your politicians, put pressure on your state and federal politicians. Tell them to not support this. Shane O'Brien, free Assange. Yes, mate, they should certainly free him. And what they're doing with Julian is they're using him as a dingo pelt on the fence to scare away any other journalists who've got ideas of reporting the truth. The information will actually, I believe, first of all, we must have a free press. That's paramount in this. Some people say, well, Julian has compromised lives. He has saved many, many lives in the future because he's put this out there. We've got to see what some people in the United States are doing to their own citizens and to other people around the world. So, yes, I agree with you, mate. Free Julian. And we've made that clear. Thank you, Icy. I love you. I love your photo. Great interview with Maria Z this week. Thank you, mate. Thank you for watching. Let Maria know. She's doing a good job. Lynn says, hey, Senator Malcolm Roberts. G'day, everyone. Love from Queensland. Thank you very much. I'll be back there tonight. I don't like being out of Queensland. Lyndon, I'm going to read this out, every word. The ghost of Flannery rides again. What did Flannery say, Tim Flannery? He was paid a lot of money, and in my opinion, severe conflicts of interest. He was an advocate for climate change and said that the dams will never be filled again. That he has caused, and in my opinion, from his words, severe losses of people's lifestyle, livelihoods, and property damage because of what happened at Wivenhoe back when Anna Bligh was in charge in 2011. Tim Flannery has a lot to answer for. Didn't he say also not only that we would never have dams full again, that there'd be no ice on the ice caps within a few years? That was some time ago. Of course, that didn't pass either. I see again, massive immigration will drive down wages. Raise the cost of living dramatically, as it is, raise inflation dramatically, as it is, and raise the cost of housing and rents, as it is. We've got people, Australians, sleeping under bridges, in cars, in tents, in caravans, and we're letting in record numbers of foreigners. Then they say we need to catch up after COVID. That's rubbish. We caught up by February last year, 1.9 people workers on non-resident visas, and now we have 2.7 million. 1.9 million, 2.7 million on working visas. 1.9 February last year, we'd caught up with pre-COVID. Now we've got 2.7. And we've got the highest ever net migration of people who are going to be ultimately settling here, resident visas. I'll take one more question, then I better move on. Oh, wonderful to see this. Lot 4656 says Lima Declaration 1975. Nailed it. One of many steps from the UN and the World Economic Forum. World Economic Forum, I don't think it was founded then, but it was pretty soon. But the Lima Declaration, for those who don't know, is UNIDA Lima Declaration 1975. Whitlam, as Prime Minister, Labor Prime Minister, signed that declaration. Malcolm Fraser, his supposed arch enemy, ratified it on behalf of the Liberal Party government in the following year, 1976. And what it boils down to is the Lima Declaration is a blueprint for shutting down manufacturing in Western democracies and exporting it to, at that time, China and other developing countries. China's developed, but our policies are still destroying manufacturing in this country. So I hope you enjoyed or some of the news is not good, but we have got to wake people up in this country because the people are in charge of the country officially in the Constitution, but in practice, the people have been asleep. We, the people, have been asleep. We need to wake more people up. Share the information, please. And thank you very much for listening in.